Understanding your needs and challenges, what makes your future safer and more successful, that is what engages us. That's what we are best at. To be able to foresee or prevent what may happen, the complexity and relationship between various factors in the event of an incident must be understood. At Alandia Loss Prevention, we consider every eventuality with a human perspective. We are a well-groomed team with knowledge in human factors, global shipping, ship management, and marine insurance. Alandia is a marine insurance entrepreneur with large resources and extensive expertise. We provide you with precise and accurate analyses. On a solid foundation, with more than 80 years of experience in marine insurance, our client promise is to meet the highest level of risk management needs.
Welcome to a workshop where you learn practical tools to implement cybersecurity in your organization. Today, we have with us our expert partner, Deductive Labs, that is going to learn you a lot about this burning topic. Deductive Labs, a cybersecurity company, has a background from the highly regulated and controlled financial sector and specialized in the maritime sector. Services range from security assessments and pen testing services, security advisory and project management, as well as security awareness training for the maritime environment. Deductive Labs is also providing different cybersecurity solutions. Clients and references are ranging from small maritime companies to large international groups, but also training centers as well as insurance companies. Today, we are grateful to have with us Deductive Labs CEO, Mr. Kim Halavakoski, together with CCO, Mr. Johan Sjölund, that will be guiding us in this workshop we have today. Remember, all of you, to put your questions in the Q&A section down in the Zoom window, and Kim and Johan will discuss them later on in the workshop. Welcome, Kim and Johan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here today.
Yes, we are happy to be here, and we will start off this seminar together with Johanna from Alandia. Can you start off with the presentation so we can see it? There we go. And go to the next slide, please. Kim is managing the slides. Yes, we sometimes used to start off the presentation by talking about a casino in Las Vegas that was once hacked by an accident. It was actually a very safe, very secure casino with a grand new and fancy aquarium in the entrance, in the lobby. They had a great idea to have a very modern, very connected thermometer in the aquarium, and unfortunately they connected that thermometer to the wrong network. So by the simple small accident from connecting the thermometer in the lobby, even if there were angry sharks and dangerous piranhas in that aquarium to guard the casino, they got hacked actually through the thermometer in the aquarium in the lobby. Why do we take this when we talk about cybersecurity? Well, there are a few sensors on board your ships, and we want to have this as a metaphor for this seminar and other seminars that we do. In the same slide, we must take on this fact that the cost from being hacked can be huge. And also the question is, in every work we have, is how prepared are you out there? And that's a little bit what we are going to talk about. We can go to the agenda. Well, the agenda is very simple. We will give a small introduction, definition. What is actually maritime cybersecurity? We have to go into the IT and OT environments. What is that? That is very well defined as well in the IMO documentation, etc. We will talk a little bit briefly about threat actors, motives, and methods. We will go through a little bit on the security standard frameworks, but we will very much focus on best practices. We will also connect that to your documentation, the SMS, etc. We will also go through a little bit about the organization and the managerial challenges. In almost every case, we got this question. So about this pen testing, should we start off there? That will also go in the end. And also, we will a little bit argue regarding the necessity of compliance, but is that actually to be secure and safe? And then we will end up in questions and answers. So please send us questions during the seminar. We will try to answer them in the end. And during the seminar, we will also carry out 2 small polls that we would be happy to having you answering. So please, Kim, the scene is yours.
Thank you. All right, so what's this maritime cybersecurity? Basically, maritime cybersecurity is no different from any other security. It's the collection of tools, policies, guidelines, procedures, any security architectures or other IT/OT architectures that you have, safeguards, all the risk management that you need to do, any plans, any actions, best practices, and all the technologies you use to protect your maritime organization and the vessels that you have. So having all this, making sure that you do the right things in the right time, in the right way, is what maritime cybersecurity is about. And you can also say that ships and vessels might seem like unusual targets for cyber attacks, but we also all know that you're getting increasingly connected even while on the sea, and everything has an internet connection nowadays. So they are susceptible to attacks. Looking at the maritime environments, there's a difference between IT and OT assets and environments. IT, you can see the traditional IT systems, the workstations, the laptops, the mobile phones, the emails, the calendars, the chats that you use, intranet, extranet, all these regular IT environments that almost all companies have. OT systems, then again, those are the operational technologies that you have on board ships that you use to control the vessel, to measure stuff, to do your navigations, communications, propulsion, cargo, all that stuff can be seen as OT systems. And OT usually controls the physical aspects of the physical world, and hence also a bit different from traditional IT stuff you have to consider in implementing cybersecurity. There's also quite a bit of difference between the priorities in these different systems. So you might have heard of confidentiality, integrity, and availability on the IT security side. These are the 3 main tenets of information security that you have to protect. You have to protect the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability of your data and your systems. So you have to make sure that the data is secure, confidential, only those who need access have access, integrity, that the data is not broken, it's correct, and then also availability, that it's available when you need it, and also to the people that need it. OT systems, and again, you can't encompass the complexity of OT by just saying confidentiality, integrity, and availability, because OT systems have another priority, and that's more like control, availability, integrity, and confidentiality. Confidentiality of your OT systems is maybe not that important, but it's really important that you have control of those assets and that they are available at all times. You can't be without navigation or without ballast pumps or things like this on a vessel, because then things can go really wrong. And last but not least, also traceability. So you need to have some kind of access to logs, monitoring, and so forth, so you know what's going on these assets, be it an IT or OT. When we look at the ship, there's a lot of different systems on board a ship or vessel nowadays, and that are used to control the various aspects of the vessel, what they do, how they operate, loading and stability. Just looking at the list here: bridge control, communications, crew network, ship networks, supply chain. You have vendors and manufacturers having access to the vessels to do their maintenance. We have remote access, perhaps. You have physical security with locked doors and maybe access control systems to certain areas, safety systems, propulsion and power, and so forth. All these systems are getting more and more connected on the vessel, whereas traditionally they have been separate, totally separate and not connected to the networks. But nowadays, all these kind of systems are getting connected to the traditional IT networks, where all the servers and emails and calendars and intranets live. And this then gives rise to new threats to this system. If a hacker or attacker would get access to the ship networks in one way or another, either being local or remote, they can start doing pretty nasty stuff with these systems. They can manipulate them, breach them, take them over. So just imagine what would happen if you would take over the navigational systems on a vessel, and what the impact would be for the vessel for that. Or just manipulating data so you see the wrong GPS coordinates, or you don't have the correct location of the ship, and so forth. So this whole environment is really getting important to secure, and that's why we have the new regulations for cybersecurity from IMO also. Let's jump into a quick poll.
Yes.
If Johanna can kick off that. Thank you.
We would be very happy if you can just fast click in. This is not a deep site analysis, but we would be happy if you would just fast off click in this and submit the poll. We'll give you 1 minute here.
Right, so it's about your inventories. Do you know what you have on the ships for your OT and also for your IT, of course? And have you analyzed these assets for what kind of cybersecurity risks are there in these assets? And have you created a plan to take care of and mitigate the risks that you have identified? So you basically secure your vessels by doing certain controls and certain actions that you have identified that, oh, this is not as we planned or as we thought, by doing the risk analysis. No, I can't see how many answers have come in, but I guess, Johanna, you have some kind of view there for you to see how many answers have come in.
Yes, we can perhaps go into the answers. Would be nice to see the results immediately here. Oh, look at this. Good. Thank you, everybody.
All right,
So,
thanks
Kim.
a lot. So we see that 41% of you have done some inventory of your OT, and then 29 are working on it, and 29 haven't done anything yet. With IT, even less inventories for now, and also quite a bit working on it. And then a lot of you have done the IT asset inventories. So that's good. And regarding the risk analysis, 47% yes, working on it, and a few of you haven't started yet, so might be a good time to start. And action plans, no, a few, and then working on it, quite a few of you, that's good. And then some of you have created the working plan, but not started yet. Okay, good, thanks for that. So I hope we go forward with the presentation, if it's still available. Yeah, good. So going forward, why are we concerned about these cybersecurity risks and threats? And that comes to the threat actors, their motives, and their methods that they use for breaking into things. Normally, we can see the threat actors categorized in these different profiles. So we have hacktivists, cyber criminals, opportunists, nation states, terrorists, insiders, and also for the maritime sector, pirates. So these are different profiles that do things for different motives. You can also here see on the bottom side, there's a greeting message that were included in a recent Norsk Hydro attack where they got infected by ransomware. So these are the nasty surprises that you can get in your systems when you get breached, as in the case of Norsk Hydro here. You can also ask, like we have here, why would somebody be interested in us? We are so small and we don't carry any value for hackers. Well, that's not always the case. You do have data, you do have resources, and in the case of ransomware, there's still ways that these attackers can succeed to extort you of money if they manage to get access to your system and ransomware them. So when we look at the motives for these groups, some are ideological, so they do it for some ideological reasons. They want to show something, they want to make a statement. You also have political motives where things are done because of global politics or national politics. Also have the national and military agendas. There's a lot of things going on there between different nation states in the world with huge and quite cunning resources that can do almost anything in the area of cybersecurity and also in the area of intrusion. We also unfortunately have technical and industrial espionage, where some companies or organizations can even hire hackers to break into competitors to gain access to secret materials. Then revenge can be some part where disgruntled employees who leave the company might try to make a statement and give revenge if they have been treated badly or something like that. And then finally, but not least, financial gain. So right here you can also see some of this is not maritime related, but this is what different accounts are sold for on the dark market on the interweb. So you can see that Spotify accounts, Netflix accounts, it's not that well, quite cheap to be honest. The Netflix account normally costs what it is, $9.90 or $10 USD per month, but you can buy a broken or hacked account for $1 to $3 if you think that it's too cheap, too expensive for you to buy the real one. The money in this for the attackers is that they do not only break into one account, they break into millions of accounts. And then if they can sell millions of accounts to these prices, that's where the profit lies. So there's money involved in this, and that's why it's so prevalent with these cyber attacks. This is an example of WannaCry, which was a ransomware that was circulating a couple of years ago. This is the screen you would get on a computer when it's ransomware, when an attacker has managed to install the ransomware on your computer and has encrypted all the files on your computer, and then asking for $300 to lock up the computer again. And here you can see the Bitcoin address where they wish to get $300 submitted there, so they will lock up your computer again if you would have been hacked. It's interesting to see, looking at the Bitcoin blockchain, I have checked that address, and you can see, since Bitcoin is a public system, so it's a public ledger, you can see all transactions. In this case, we can see that for this particular address in this attack, there's been 19.6811950 Bitcoins in this wallet or this address. So, oh, now my animation's gone. So 19.68 Bitcoins has been paid to this address. So obviously quite a few organizations has been a target of this specific attack. And when we calculate according to the recent Bitcoin pricing, this would amount up to 857,652 euros that the attackers have gotten by launching this WannaCry attack to various organizations in the world. With a $300 per target price, this sums up to about 3,400 victims that have paid for getting their computers decrypted by this specific attack. So here we see that this is the reason why these attacks happen. It's the financial motive. So yeah, the main reason and the main motive behind most of this attack is financial. There's money to be gained somehow, either by ransomwaring and extorting, or by selling the data that you get them, or by otherwise exploiting or using the data that they get to. I also mentioned pirates there in the threat profiles, and pirates have also been known to break into maritime operators to find out which ships have the best cargo to attack. So there's different methods that can be used to monetize these attacks and why they are done. So these threat actors, if we talk about the cyber criminals and the more cyber related ones, are of course, there's two different categories of cyber attacks that may affect companies and ships. That's untargeted attacks and targeted attacks. Untargeted attacks are attacks where a hacker or a cyber criminal tries to exploit a lot of different organizations. It doesn't really have a target organization. It's not targeting Deductive Labs or Alandia Insurance. It's just going out on the internet wild and trying to find vulnerabilities and trying to find who's not protected enough, and then breaking into those to see what they can find. Then we also have targeted attacks where an attacker specifically targets you and your organization. So they know who you are, they find out all they can find out about you and try to get into your environment that way.
When considering this targeted and untargeted attack, and related to this question that who would be interested in us, we're so small, we must have in mind that not even Maersk was targeted. It was an untargeted attack, and they are they got untargeted attack. So just him can have some water.
Yeah, that's true. Maersk was not directly targeted, but it was a collateral damage from an attack that happened in Ukraine towards many different organizations in Ukraine, and then Maersk happened to have an office there and was breached that way, and then all things went sideways from there. So when we again look at these different methods, they can be targeted or untargeted, and then To the right here, we can see different methods that are used. They can be malware or viruses or malicious software that gets installed either via phishing or sending emails to a large amount of people who then click on the links or click on the attachments, and then the computers get infected that way if they are not properly protected and properly updated. Waterholing is an attack where you infect a common website, for example, Deductive Labs. We get millions of hits every day. And then an attacker would breach our site, then they would be able to infect and do stuff on all the visitors that we have. Scanning is the regular internet scanning where attackers scan the internet to see if there's any vulnerable systems and open ports and so forth that they can exploit and use as a attacking vector. Typo squatting is where more of a phishing site where they create domains that look like your domain, and then they lure people into visiting their domain instead of the real one. Social engineering is where people, the attackers they will impersonate somebody with authority. For example, a leader, the CEO, or a telecommunications provider, or a vendor, or whatever they need to do in order to get access to your locations, your premises. Just imagine if you would have a known vendor that comes in with their vendor logos on their breast and come to service your equipment, and then suddenly you have a attacker who puts on the same kind of clothes and then breaches your perimeter by just looking like a regular vendor. Then brute forcing, trying a lot of passwords and stuff, breaching into your systems, trying millions of passwords and usernames to try to get into them. Credential stuffing is getting more and more prevalence today. That means that, for example, if your Google or Microsoft emails get breached and they know your password to one system, then they will try to reuse that password to your other systems, for example, your company systems. That's important to remember, that don't ever use the same password for your private and work stuff, or basically don't use the same password for any service at all. Because if one of them gets breached, then the attackers will try to use the same passwords for all other systems that you're registered to. Denial of service attacks are where attackers attack your systems and overwhelm them with data and connections, so they basically die and stop working. Phishing and spear phishing is something we all know by now. It's when you receive these innocent looking emails trying to look like they're from your bank or from your boss or from other places that you trust, and then try to entice you into clicking links or opening attachments that then either you expose sensitive information, or in the worst case, your computer gets breached by clicking on the attached links and programs. So now we'll try if you have audio here. Here is a video from DNVGL. You might have seen this, but this is a really good segue into the next section here. So we'll have a look at that in about 3 minutes.
We got what we want.
He just did what he thought was common procedure.
Uh-oh. Bad practice. Breaking in shouldn't be that easy.
I made sure it looked really legitimate. Logo, layout, sender's email address, everything.
Okay, excellent job.
Cybercrime is a rapidly growing threat to almost all aspects of modern life, and the shipping and offshore industries are no exception. Onboard systems are increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks. Safety of the ship has entered a new dimension.
So we prepared some fake emails for the rest of the crew, sent from the shipping company. asking them to verify critical information like usernames and passwords and bank information.
Today, hackers are becoming more and more sophisticated, and by the time you realize that something is wrong, it is usually too late. Connecting personal devices to operational equipment leaves a gaping hole in an otherwise tightly secured system.
The phone was just plugged into a computer on the bridge network. Should I try my ghost chip program?
There's something wrong with the Actis. 2 ships, nothing on the radar.
Yeah.
Can't see anything.
There's no visual. Must be something wrong with Actis then.
This is just incredible. Now let's slow down the propulsion.
We're losing speed. What's going on here?
Once the malicious software has infected one computer, it may quickly spread to others connected to the same network. Think before you click. Research the facts behind emails and their attachments. Make sure external drives and USBs are clean. Be aware when third parties access your systems or data. Protect your passwords. Never connect personal items to the ship critical systems. Never use external Wi-Fi for company emails or downloads unless the network is protected and safe. Learn how backup and restore is done on board your ship. Always report errors and mistakes. Educate yourself on cyber risks and how it affects your ship, your colleagues, and you personally. Cybersecurity is just as much a question of culture and mindset as it is technology. GARD and DNVGL hope the maritime industry will establish and follow best practices for cybersecurity awareness.
So that was a, let's see here, full screen, sorry. So you saw a lot of the practicalities of a cyber attack there with what can be done, how it would look and so forth, and also what you should think about when operating your vessels. Don't plug in USB sticks without checking, and don't use Post-it for passwords and so forth, because these are all things that might get you hacked. Now, these are typical challenges that we see in the maritime industry when we do assessments and work with our clients and customers. So usually you might not have a very clear or updated inventory of your IT and OT systems. That's like we saw in the questionnaires, that's getting changed. There might be several different lists of equipment that's not updated. It's an Excel somewhere that was updated last a couple of years ago and so forth. And this is not getting traction because this is one of the requirements from IMO also, that you need to know your environment. You have a lot of you might have unknown systems on your networks and vessels. You may have outdated or unpatched systems, both on the IT and OT side, which means that you also have vulnerable systems that have weaknesses and vulnerabilities that might be exploited by an attacker if they get access to those systems. You also have unsecured or poorly configured wireless networks, poor or non-existent network segmentation in some cases that has not been implemented. So you have all the systems on the same network and you haven't separated them to different networks. This is important from the side that if one system gets breached in one network, it doesn't have the ability to infect all the other systems on your networks because they are separated. Usually we see also lack of good monitoring and good logging. This is also, of course, due to the maritime environment, that you have satellite communication systems and different communication systems that are not so cheap, quite expensive, and logging and monitoring requires that you have access to these systems and they are sent to shore. So that increases the cost of operating a vessel. But nonetheless, these are really important stuff that that needs to be in place to have good visibility into the cybersecurity, and also into visibility into third-party vendors and manufacturers, what they do on your vessels and networks. It's also something that we typically see that it's quite uncontrolled. The vendors might have access with TeamViewer, or they might have access all the time. Nobody knows when they are there. There's no logs of when the vendors have access and so forth. So there's a lot of things to improve there. Poor password management practices we mentioned. The situation from the video when you have the passwords sticked on a post-it next to the computer on the vessel is quite normal. Also the case where the systems and users on the vessel networks usually don't have personal accounts. It's role accounts and so forth, where you share the information, you share the logins with other captains and masters and other crewmen, because that's easier to manage. Yeah, and also lack of cybersecurity awareness among the crew, employees, and contractors. So these are the typical challenges that we have seen, and that's out there in the industry. Then if we jump into a bit more about IMO and what is expected from IMO. Basically, you maybe have these 3 steps that IMO pushes you to do. You need to assess your maritime cybersecurity risks. You have to know what systems you have, what risks they expose, and also then based on that you design a secure maritime architecture where you take into account all the risks and implement systems and safeguards for protecting these assets. And the end game is to protect the vessel and maritime operations continuously, so you never have any gaps or weaknesses in your systems. Like mentioned before, this becomes quite challenging when you have both IT and OT equipment. Like we mentioned before, IT equipment is maybe a bit easier to manage and easier to control because those are known by most people. OT, on the other hand, this can be equipment that's going to be there for 10 to 15 years. It's maybe not possible to update them. It's not possible to patch them. So the OT systems will be left can be left in vulnerable states for longer periods of time because these systems just need to work. There's no time to do a lot of maintenance on them. And unfortunately, most of the OT systems are not yet completely cyber secure. There hasn't been that much work done on securing these systems, but that's coming now, and the things are getting better. But due to the lifespan of this equipment, we might be still seeing equipment out there for 10 years where it's not possible even to secure the device themselves. So you have to build safeguards around the systems to protect them. When we look at the different security standards and frameworks and guidelines that are out there that has been published by the maritime sector and also by other international standard organizations, we can look at this. We have, of course, IMO with the guidelines on maritime cyber risk management and resolution 42898 on the maritime cyber risk management in safety management systems. Those are the ones now driving the change in the maritime sector. And I'm sure you're very aware of these and probably have looked at them before and trying to figure out, okay, what it is that I need to do. Then we have ISO 27001, which is an international standard for information security management systems. It's basically a framework with policies, processes, and controls that you need to implement in order to have information security in your environment. We also have more detailed and more complex standards like the ISA IEC 62443, Security for Industrial Automation and Control Systems. The maritime vessel and environment is quite similar to industrial control systems that you have in factories and power plants and so forth. It's not the traditional IT environment that you have. So there's a lot of specialities in the environment that you need to think about. And the 62443 standard takes care of that side. But it's quite complex. Also, NIST has received the Cybersecurity Framework, which is a good standard and a good set of controls that you can apply. And this is also referenced in both in IMO and BIMCO documents. BIMCO then again also have their guidelines for security on board ships, with a really good set of guidelines on what you need to think about in the maritime environment. And then there's IET, Code of Practice for Cybersecurity for Ships. We have the Digital Container Ship Association's Cybersecurity Initiative. That's also a good set of standards and documentation that you can have a look at when you start implementing your cybersecurity in your fleet or in your organization. So there's a lot of different standards, there's a lot of different guidelines out there that you need to look at and choose from when you start implementing cybersecurity. And this is perhaps where it's a bit hard to know which one should I choose, which way should I go, and also what exactly do I need to do, because these standards are quite complex, they are quite big, and have a lot of different peculiarities to them. So this is what we recommend to do, is to use a combination of ISO 27000 framework and standards combined with the NIST cybersecurity framework. And this will be the base that you start looking at when you start working with cybersecurity on your organization. They give a good set of processes and approaches that you can implement in order to go forward with running cybersecurity continuously in your organization. Then the BIMCO, the DCSA, the IAT, and the IACS documents also give a lot of details on the maritime environment, what you need specifically to think about in the maritime environment and specifically on the ships. Like I mentioned, also the 62443 is a really good set of really good framework, but it's really complex. So if you don't have any of these management systems in use already in your organization, 62443 might just be a little bit too complex to start implementing. But further down the line, it can be used as a guiding principle and stealing good ideas from that framework to implement also in the maritime sector. But it's quite complex. So our recommendation is to start looking at the ISO 27000, combining it with the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's a lot of mappings that exist between BIMCO and the NIST and ISO 27001, so you can have a good approach to how you will start managing cybersecurity and the different areas of cybersecurity when you start going down this path. And then when you combine them with the maritime specific guidelines and the instructions, you start getting into where rubber meets the road, and you start doing the actual activities in your environment and on your vessels. And this is the starting point where, when we work with our clients, this is how we usually go about to even start doing things. So first, we do a current state analysis where we have looked at ISO 27000, we have looked at NIST and the different frameworks. Maybe the customer already have chosen one of them and works with those. So then we use that. But basically then we go in and do a current state analysis. Where do we stand today? What's the current situation? What exists? What doesn't exist? Which policies and processes do you have in place? Which technologies do you have in place? How are they protected? How are they secured? And so forth. So we get a good understanding of the environment. Then usually next step is to go about and create this list of IT and OT asset inventories. So basically finding out what stuff do you have in your environment on the vessels, which are the devices and the systems and the applications that are used to operate the vessel. and which are the IT assets and environments and applications that also exist besides the OT environments. So like I said before, the IT and OT networks are getting connected. So even if you have good security on your OT side, it might be that the IT side is vulnerable somehow. So if an attacker would get access to the IT side, they could pivot and come into the OT side also, or vice versa. Then when we have the list of IT and OT assets, we do the risk analysis. So go through each asset, what's the risk of this asset if it's compromised? So going through the whole list of assets and analyzing the risks associated with those assets. The point of this is to find where the vulnerabilities are and where the risks are, and then create a risk mitigation plan. So basically from seeing what exists, creating a plan about what do we need to do with all these assets to make them secure in our environment. And then when you have done this for the first part, then you're starting to be covered for most of the basic IMO requirements that's in place. And lastly, or first, you can do this at any time basically, but also perform the cybersecurity awareness for your crew and employees. And this is really important because one of the biggest unclear factors in cybersecurity are the humans and the people who work with the technology. We need to know what the risks are. We need to know how to handle the equipment, how to configure the equipment, we need to know what the attacks are out there. So when it happens, we can identify them, and perhaps we also can do something about it too, so we do not get attacked. For example, in the case of phishing attacks or things like this, if your employees know what that looks like and know how to think about that, then it's more likely that they will not fall victims for those kinds of attacks. So going forward, you can see these activities as short, medium, and long term. So in the short term, it's really important to start the inventory, know what you have in order to be able to analyze the risks and protect those assets that you have in place. That's basically according to the plan that we normally do, this plan. So this is the short-term version. This is what you need to do in order to be ready when you have your audit, your doc audit. Inventorying the assets, doing risk assessments for all the assets, creating a mitigation plan to take care of all the risks that you have identified, and also creating risk management procedures. You have to demonstrate also how have you done your risk assessment. So you have to write a bit of documents around that you can show. You also need some vessel cybersecurity plans. So basically something that explains how do you implement cybersecurity on the vessels. Do you have firewalls? Do you have antivirus? Do you have what kind of access controls do you have to your equipment? What kind of network segmentation have you implemented on the vessels? How do you manage vendors and remote access to the systems? What are your incident response plans if something happens on the vessel? Who will be doing what? What are the roles of the different cybersecurity roles on the ship? And also in collaboration with the office on land. Because like we all know, on the vessels, most likely there are no cybersecurity experts working on the vessels. So when something serious like a cybersecurity incident happens, there will need to be collaboration between the vessel, between the IT department and the cybersecurity department, if you have such a thing in your company. So you need to have these response plans and contingency plans. What do we do if this computer becomes unavailable, if it's infected? What options do we have? How do we work around that? And lastly, educating the employees and crew in cybersecurity. That's the short term. This is what you need to do. And this is what you will need to show also to the auditors. we have the awareness. We can show that we have had the awareness for employees. You have your risk list, risk of lists documented. You have lists of IT and OT equipment that you have documented, and all this you can show. So in medium term, when you have done this pre-work, it's time to go forward and do something continuous about this. So designing a cybersecurity management program and plan. And here's where these standards come in. So ISO 27000 is a standard that uses risk management as the basis for doing continuous improvement and running the program. It's not something that you just do once, it's something that you have running all the time. Creating and improving more policies, there's quite a bit of documentation that might need to be written. How do you do things? How do you manage the cybersecurity parts? And also then incorporating the cybersecurity management program into the SMS. Basically, the minimum requirements is that you need to somehow address cybersecurity risk management in your SMS. It has to have at least a reference to your risk management policy and the risk management, the actual risks that you have identified in your risk management process. And then also in this medium term, start doing this on a continuous basis. It's not something that you just do once. You will do it once a year, once a quarter, where you go through all these things and find out what has changed. Is there something new that we need to take into account? You have new programs and new systems and new stuff getting installed. Then you again need to think about what's the cybersecurity around this new system? How do I manage it? And that's the way you keep it running all the time. On the long term, you will have created this system, just like the SMS that you're already operating. So you now have a system for managing cybersecurity in your organization, and it needs to continuously run and update and improve. So here is where in the long term you have a system like the SMS that you have today, but incorporating more the cybersecurity aspects of all your operations that you keep running. You do improvements all the time. You make sure that you do audits, you do assessments to measure that where are we today, what do we need to improve, and that's the way you continuously improve and keep it up to date. Because like we all know, cybersecurity is not a static thing. The cybersecurity landscape changes all the time. There's new threats, very different things happening. You introduce new systems and new stuff into your environments, which every time you need to think about the cybersecurity. And yeah, self thing here, but of course, if this sounds really complex, I recommend you to contact a cybersecurity partner to work with you on these things. And it's not necessarily that complex, but there are a lot of pitfalls that you can avoid if you work with a knowledgeable partner to get you forward. So you don't have to do everything from scratch yourself. There's knowledgeable partners that can help you, like yourselves, to do this in a proper way from the beginning, and that way be cheaper than doing it yourself. If we look at some of the low-hanging fruits that you could start doing already today, when we're ready with this webinar, you can go out and changing your default admin passwords on your systems if you haven't done that. That's something that we quite often encounter when we do pen testing, that for various reasons, the systems and equipment on board the vessels have default passwords, because why would you change them? Who would have changed them? Whose responsibility is that? So you end up with different operational equipment that have default passwords like admin 1234 or default or password or things like this that has never been changed. And also updating your passwords that you have for your crew and your systems. Don't keep it static. update them regularly, and also use maybe some kind of password management program, so you keep track of your passwords in a secure way. Don't use the post-it notes for storing passwords under the keyboard. That's not really a good thing. In our pen testing, we also find files and Excels and Word documents on vessel systems that contains passwords to all the systems on board the networks. That's not really ideal, and that's really nice for us as pen testers to find these files with passwords, but that can be avoided by using good systems for that. Also, anti-malware, antivirus technologies should be installed. This is something that probably everybody has today. It's not usually that you see that systems are not protected with antivirus software. But if you have such systems, just make sure that you have those systems also. So there's a lot of few things here that you can do, and you will get the presentation afterwards. So this is not rocket science. There's a lot of easy ways that you can fix the security on parts of your vessel systems already today. Cybersecurity plan for vessels is one thing that you also will need to demonstrate at some point. You're probably all familiar with the ship security plan that exists today, but the ship security plan is mostly about physical security. It doesn't include, or haven't included until now, since the new requirements are. So it doesn't include cybersecurity. And it's advisable to separate the cybersecurity parts into different cybersecurity plan that only contains all the stuff that's needed for cybersecurity on the vessel. This is due to a couple of reasons. One, the ship security plan is per vessel, and it's audited, I think, every 5 years. And also, it can be a bit problematic to update these plans regularly. So if there is, by you having a separate cybersecurity plan, you give yourself freedom to not update all your documents that you have, or all your paragraphs and chapters in your ship security plan when you separate it to a separate document that only has stuff for cybersecurity. It makes it easier to manage, basically, so you don't have to go through all the hurdle of approving and distributing the plans, other plans all the time. But there's a lot of information about what should be included in a cybersecurity plan for the ships, and those can be found in BIMCO and in the different documents that you already are familiar with. Yes. So we mentioned earlier that the organizational and managerial challenge. Managing security and safety is not a new challenge for maritime operators, but the managing of cybersecurity is going to be a new thing, and cybersecurity can be quite complex. And like we mentioned earlier, with all the different systems that you have on board, it can be quite a hurdle to ensure that everything is okay and everything is accounted for. But cybersecurity needs to be a holistic approach to your environment. It's not something that you just install. It's not a piece of cybersecurity that you install on the vessel and then you're done, then you're ready. It's about all the people and processes and technologies and how you do that needs to be managed in order to have a cyber secure environment. And it's really important here that you have your management endorsement and support. It's, like I said, it's not something we can just install and be done with. It's a process. It's a system that you need to put in place where you all the time take this into account for everything you do. And it needs your management support. It needs adequate resources, budgets, and priorities also, because otherwise you won't be able to complete all the actions and all the stuff you need to do. There's also really important to have cross-department collaboration between your IT and IT departments, and also between your maritime departments, because these two departments need to talk to each other and ensure that these systems that they have on the vessel are properly managed. The IT people need to know about new systems that the OT side is installing, and vice versa, because otherwise there will be a gray area about how things are done. And also the human factor. Your employees and crews will need to have awareness, and you also need to build a organizational culture that endorses cybersecurity. Your management will also need to show that this is important. If you don't get the budget and you don't get the resources from your management, then you're basically also saying that this is not important. This is not a priority for us as an organization. And that's something that the management of all the organization need to understand, that we need to do this. We need to show to the organization that this is important. We need to give the necessary resources and budgets to drive this forward. Now we're at poll number 2. So Johanna, can you? All right, let it run for a few minutes. Basically a bit seeing where you are today with your cybersecurity preparedness. In the area of technical preparedness, personal and crew awareness. Let it run for a few minutes. Hopefully we'll see that quite a few of you have already done things and have reasonable maturity in these areas.
We also see that we have some questions from the participants, and thank you for your questions and your activity here. We look forward to your more questions, and we will try to answer and also discuss this when we're through this presentation. So
yes. I know, Johanna, how does it look? Are we having a lot of answers already?
Oh,
okay. So technical preparedness and maturity. Nobody is a 1, so nobody's really bad. Most of you are considering that you're a 3, so almost best. And actually 29% are the best in the class in this case, so that's good. And general cybersecurity preparedness, 4, 3, and 2 are the most relevant. But nobody, most of you want to be a 3, and a few of you are 4, so the best. And also, what else do we have? The personnel and crew awareness. Also, we see a quite nice distribution between 2 and 3. Nobody is really bad at this, so that's really good. And it shows that organizations in the maritime sector have been working on this heavily for the last years, since you have been knowing that the IMO comes with the new regulations. Training is done regularly, and also working on plans to do that. Some of you have not trained your employees, so that's maybe something that that is time to organize, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Good. Let's go forward. So yeah, what about pen testing? This is something we often get a question about, that should we start off with doing a penetration test? I don't know if you all know what a penetration testing is, but that's basically hiring a security company to attack your environment, attack your vessels, attack your offices, via the internet or even physically, to see if they can break in. We do these kinds of pen testing, and that's why we also get this question. Of course, pen testing is a really good way of measuring your security level. Is there anything in our environment that can be used to penetrate and get access to the vessel or to the environment from externally? So is this a good thing to start off with? I would say yes and no. It depends on your maturity that you have today. If you're only starting out to figure out what cybersecurity is and what you need to do about it, then penetration testing will be a waste of money. It's more worth to put those budgets and that money into actually doing actionable cybersecurity assessment, so to speak. So we're back to doing the assessment against the framework that you will have chosen to use, and looking at that assessment. Where are you today? What do you need to do? And penetration testing will be a way to measure when you have done most of the stuff that you have identified that you need to do, to verify that you have done a good work and you have actually fixed and protected your environment to such a degree that it's hard to break into those environments. So penetration testing is a good thing to do, but it's not something that you would start with if you don't have all the cybersecurity processes and technologies in place. So that about that. And is this something that's really important to say? And I have to say it: compliance is not security and safety. Compliance means that you're in line with the regulatory expectations of what you need to do. And this is something we see all the time, that organizations are barely doing enough and just checking the compliance boxes. They do exactly what is required, but nothing more. Of course, because there's a cost associated, it's complexity, it's more resources, it's budgeting, all that. So I understand that. But still, that doesn't mean that you are secure. Again, compliance is a set of requirements and regulations that a regulatory framework publishes and sets expectations to the industry. And you can also understand that compliance is usually lagging a bit behind. For example, in the IMO regulation, it was published in 2017, and things have happened since that. So if you want to really be secure, you have to be a bit more than compliance, because otherwise you will not be adapting to the ever-changing cyber threat environment that is out there on the internet. So you have to be a bit more to be secure. It's a bit like here if on your vessels, if you wouldn't have any safety equipment, life rafts and life jackets, would you remove those just to save some costs? And would you get anybody to work on the vessel if you wouldn't have this kind of safety systems in place? We're going to a situation where this will probably also be the case for cybersecurity, when all the things on the vessel is connected and there will be risks associated with those systems since they are connected to the networks. Then you might also ask that, is this vessel secure enough? Do you have the cybersecurity life jackets in place? Because if you don't have that, then this vessel is not secure enough for me to travel with it. So that's really important to think about, that if you only checkbox the actual compliance requirement to save costs, then you're probably not secure enough to withstand a real cybersecurity attack. And this goes to a few slides about some bulletins and information that came from the US Coast Guard. These guys are quite effective, and there were a cybersecurity incident on a vessel in the US space, and the United States Coast Guard issued an alert and also a information bulletin regarding this incident. And just as a last slide here, that these are good things to take forward, and also if you're operating in the US area, you are required to fulfill certain requirements in order to be able to ship to port. So this is a good initiative from our side, at least. I know not everybody likes it, but these guys are hard, and they require you to do the necessary things in order to come into port. So, conclusion. Cybersecurity is really about not only the devices and the technicalities and the IT stuff in your environment. It's the awareness, the culture, and your employees and your people, what they know about it. It's the processes and procedures that you have in place to secure your environments, all the password policies and the technical policies and procedures that you have documented that ensure that your systems are up to date and secure. And it's also all the technologies that you use, be it then IT or OT, and how they are configured and how they are protected to support your business and your needs. So managing the cybersecurity is not an IT project. Usually we also say that this is cybersecurity is seen as an IT thing. It's not usually seen as a maritime operation thing. It's more lean towards the IT, but really this is a company-wide endeavor that you need to put in place. It's from the top management to the people in the organization and all the technologies in between that are used to support your environment, to support your operations, and support your vessels, and support everything that you do on a day-to-day business. It's not something that you just can install like this cybersecurity box here to the left. There is no such thing. It's the whole environment, from the culture, from the people, to the technology, to the stuff that you have in place, the stuff you have documented, the processes and procedures that you have put in place, that you need to think about how do we implement cybersecurity in our organization. And you are already used to the safety management system, so you can see cybersecurity just as another additional thing that you need to handle in a similar way like you do other areas under the SMS. So that shows you that you need to have a process, you need to have documentation, you need to have a way to continuously manage how you operate, how you instruct, and how you work with the area of cybersecurity. So yeah, how are we with time? Good. All right. Let me take some water. So questions and answers.
Yes, Kim, we have received some questions from two participants, Kim.
Yes.
First question was sent quite early, and somebody here, thank you for your questions, by the way, did ask if we know and if we have any comments on BitSight as a tool for measuring your cybersecurity, Kim. What comments do we have here?
Yeah, I know. We know BitSight with what product it is and what they do, and of course that's one way of at least starting to look at your cybersecurity and what it looks like.
What do you think the BitSight? What kind of service does BitSight give? If we tell that to the audience compared to others.
BitSight is a service that provides a platform where you can kind of measure your cybersecurity rating, and it basically goes ahead and gathers information about your organization, your domains, your products and stuff that you use, and gives a kind of report on that. It's a good thing maybe to start that and do it for you, so you can see what kind of stuff do you have and so forth. But in order to really get into how you manage cybersecurity on your vessels, BitSight doesn't give insight into that side at all. So it's a tool that can be used to see what your external exposure is and how does your company look like from the outside. What kind of applications and systems and websites and certificates and so forth do you have in place, and how does it look like you have it from the outside, and get a report on that. But in order to really get to know your vessels and your maritime operations, then BitSight is obviously not enough. Then you need something else to get into details on that. But there are various similar services that of course can be used, and they produce beautiful reports and can be used as a incitements towards the management in the company that, hey, here's a BitSight report, this is what it looks like, and maybe drive decisions forward to start doing something if it looks like you have some issues there or so forth.
Yes.
So definitely worth trying out.
We also got a question here from a participant that asking this question. I really would like to have an open discussion with the whole meeting, which is not possible. But how are the authorities currently monitoring the implementation of cybersecurity on ships at present? This is a good question, and yeah, Kim, what comment could we give here?
We have contacts to Traficom and so forth, so we have regular conversations about where we're heading and what's happening in this area. And currently there is no monitoring as such for monitoring the maritime space, if so to speak. Everything is happening on a case-by-case basis according to the dock audits and the SMC audits that you will be doing and have planned. Like you also know, these audits are happening on a usually 5-year basis, so it's not something really frequent that's going on all the time, measuring cybersecurity in the maritime environment. So
Traficom is
and also
national organization, we must say, in Finland. So
yeah, Traficom is in Finland, the authority managing the maritime side here. And unfortunately, the ones that have driven the monitoring to the farthest, I guess, are the classification societies that have really good documentation on what needs to be done, and also doing more detailed audits of cybersecurity when they do it. But unfortunately, from the authority side in Finland and in other Nordic countries, this is still something that will improve and will be more formalized and I guess hopefully more declarative when we go forward. There's no similar monitoring like you have in financial sector or health and health sector and so forth, where you have to have more reporting on incidents and so forth.
Yes, we also got a question here from from a participant we know, and Alandia would like to take that question. So we'll leave the word for Johanna. If you want to answer this question live.
No, sorry. You are the expert, so I think you are the best to answer it. Are you
Okay,
pushing
sorry.
the question?
Yes, it's a good question from Hasse. How safe was it to respond to your pulse? Kim, what do you say about this? Excellent.
Yeah. It's probably safe, but and then also asking where should you draw the line between system usability and full covered security? Can you be too paranoid? Of course, I mean, we don't do cybersecurity just because we need to do cybersecurity. And that's also why IMO and most other cybersecurity or information security standards are usually based on a risk-based approach, where you have to figure out yourself what are the risks that I care about, what are the thresholds regarding risks that I can tolerate, and what are the thresholds that I can't, and then act accordingly and implement your controls and your safeguards according to your risk tolerance. And that's why we mentioned earlier that we need to, as organizations, we or you, everybody needs to know what you have and then analyze the risks into that, and then based on your risk assessment, make the decision. Is this something I need to fix? Can I live with this if this happens? Can I live with it from a safety side? If perhaps you would have human casualties or something like that, then that's something you really need to consider. Have we made enough on this part to make it secure, or if there would be human or other casualties? But also from a financial side, if something would happen with the ship, it would be destroyed, it would sink or otherwise, but not cause any human casualties. Can we bear that risks, or do we want to fix that by implementing some kind of security controls in place? Of course, it's not good to be too paranoid, but you have to make your homework and analyze your situation, know what you have, know what risks you have, and then do what you need to do based on what you have found out, and based on your company risk profile, based on your budgets, based on your maturity and so forth. What do we think we need to do in order to cover ourselves towards this risk that we have identified? So you can be too paranoid, and being too paranoid also means that it will probably cost a lot, and the system will suffer in usability, which is not a good combination.
Thank you for that question. It was a good question. If there will be any other questions, just send them in. We want to also to say that this form of seminar is really nice, and we hope that you have learned something from that. We also want to inform that actually at the moment we are carrying out a national-wide mapping of cybersecurity together with the Finnish Ship Owners Organization and the Institute of National Preparedness. I don't know what the Finnish word for it was, but that is really interesting, and so we will have some results by end of spring from that. That could be interesting input, at least in the Finnish side, but it could be also interesting to others. I also want to put forward. Sorry.
That's maybe a bit in line with also the question about authorities and currently monitoring the implementation of cybersecurity. So this survey will give a momentary point-in-time insight into what is the situation in the Finnish maritime fleet, what's in place, what's not in place, and so forth. So, and based on that, there will also be created some best practices and guidelines from the Finnish side on areas that, from the survey, that we see that these should be addressed, this should be a focus on, and this should be described and recommended guidelines. What does the ship owners and the maritime sector in Finland think that the ship owners need to do? Yes.
Yes.
All
So
right.
Johanna.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim and Johan, for today's workshop. At least I got some action points to do on my to-do list. Thank you also, every attendee. And I would like to say for your information that Alandia, together with Deductive Labs, will soon release a cybersecurity online course, training course. And I promise to keep you updated when it is available. Would you like to say something else about this, Kim and Johan? Or shall we finish up?
No, I think that you will inform about that, but it's an online training course that will be available for the whole company. It's not only for management or such. It's a online course including certificates, etc. So you will have more information from Johanna and the people from Alandia, your partners there. So,
yes.
Thank you, everybody, and please do not hesitate contacting us or Johanna and the others at Alandia for any further questions, any thoughts, comments. We would be very happy if you disagree on any point with us, because that's also very nice.
Yes.
So.
Yes, hopefully you got some great tools to take with you from today also. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.